Uh, Hello and happy World NGO Day. That's February the 27th. That is the day when we celebrate the non-profit organizations, the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations taking care of, well, environmental affairs, of human rights, of all sorts of causes to change the world and make the world a better place. So this is marked annually. Here you see it again, International Calendar Day for a few years now. And you find more information about the World NGO Day on this address, worldngoday.org. And also, if you want to communicate about this day, do so with your NGO, for your NGO causes, hashtag World NGO Day. And well, this is what we are doing today. We are starting the second panel on the Clubhouse platform here, where you can actually do an audio social conversation. And this is a new thing, of course. We are all learning for that. What we are additionally doing, we are streaming this live. So we are recording this live. It's a good thing. I will just click the record button, because I think sometimes what comes out of these discussions is just too precious to just keep in Clubhouse. So this is why this is streamed through YouTube Live, and also it's recorded, and I will use that for the NGO-Weekly Podcast that is coming out soon, and I will make a best of out of this. So welcome all the first listeners to this panel. Let me quickly introduce who is on this panel. So first we have Miss Sara Khaddam. She is representing an organization from Syria, the Junior Chamber International, a non-profit enterprising young people leading communities, countries through projects, events, training, and programs. And of course, her perspective comes from Syria as well. Her colleague from the JCI Syria, Miss Batool Ahmad. She is the chairperson for the World NGO Day for this year, and she's a food and technology engineer from Syria, currently in the UK, doing her master in food processing. And so we have more people here on this great panel. So this is Jorge Mazuse. He is working for the United Nations in Dakar right now, and please, I have just managed to get you as a panel speaker so just a few minutes ago. So we were just updating ourselves what you are doing. So yeah, please, George, I will therefore give you the first word. Please tell us a little bit about you. What is your background when it comes to NGO? What are you doing right now?
Okay, so yes, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Jorge Mazuse, as already introduced by Daniel. So I worked about 26 years with international NGOs, and among those 26 years, I spent the last 14 years at headquarters in Geneva, in Switzerland, for Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And then a few years ago, I moved to UN as a consultant, and where I'm still on it now. So while working with NGOs, I've been in the field and for many years in different countries. And then I also been in the Middle East. I also been in different areas of Africa and Central Asia. And I worked in operations in headquarters. And then at the end, for my last 5-7 years in headquarters, so I spent in General Directorate of Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And then I work also in a training unit, developing training for the organization staff in the field. I visited many countries, so where I realized that there were many issues still to be addressed in terms of organizational, let's say, performance management and training of NGO staff in order for them to have more tools to handle other teams in the field. So during this period, I was doing consultant at the same time with UN, and then at some point I moved to completely 100% to UN now. But I still, my heart is still with NGOs, and then I still, collaborating with them. And by time to time, I do consultancies. I can do, short missions with them whenever I have opportunity.
Wow, so you're bringing in like these two perspectives, basically. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. If I may ask, because you are bringing in so much experience, also from many perspectives. So at Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, you obviously worked for such a long time, gained also this organizational, operational experience in how an organization an international aid organization is really rolling out their supplies quickly. And but now you're working for the UN. And so this panel's topic is now the global perspectives. What is the state of the NGOs 2021, World NGO Day 2021? What would you say with your overview right now? Where do we stand? How powerful are NGOs these days, or how weak are they?
Yeah, interesting question, because recently, 1 year ago, I worked in a research about the way NGOs work. And then last year, I also, during the COVID period, I also observed issues happening with NGOs in different countries. So then we realized that there were issues with the value chain, that most of NGOs, the value chain broke by the moment we had lockdown in many countries, in Western countries. Some of the international staff were being called back home, repatriated, I would say, due to the pandemic because of the uncertainties. So what happened is that some of them could manage to keep the operation going when they move the staff, but most of them, they have a sort of disruption in their value chain. That means there were certain activities or projects that need to close down due to the sudden, recall of the international personnel. So I discussed with the national personnel that used to work with NGOs in order to ask why the project should close, why this specific project should close. So I would realize that some of the personnel left on the ground, they were able to continue running the program. But the issue was, before that, there were no plan in order to transfer knowledge, process, tools, leadership, and chain of command in order to allow local personnel to continue running the activities. Even if this decision could continue to be taken by headquarters, wherever it is, but at the field level, there was a direct impact with the withdrawal of international staff. So that was a question that was very important to look at, because what we also realized that the teams that were left there, they were the ones conducting the activities before. So the question is this related to the funding or not? So that was one question. Another question is related to the knowledge. That means the teams, national teams left on the ground, are able to run the program or not. And then there were many other questions that were linked to this, but what we found is that it's not the issue about knowledge. That means the knowledge that the national staff used to have is still sufficient enough to run the program. The only issue was in the leadership, because there was no transfer of, knowledge, policies of the organization, how they're collecting the funds, how the funds are managed, how funds can be managed by national team when internationals are not there. So with this COVID thing and the lockdown and recall of personnel, when we withdrew the international personnel, there was a big gap in this. So then just briefly this, but there is a lot of things to say about that. Just to say that we realize that there will be a change in organizations, in NGOs. There will be more a sort of inclusive approach of NGOs in forms of decentralizing responsibilities and tasks and trying more and more to hire national staff to operate in their countries, in their regions, for many reasons. One of the reasons is security reasons. Another one is cultural reasons, because national know more culture than anyone else. And then another one is the uncertainties that we are living now. There will be, let's say, a sort of, we are flying in unknown in terms of how the NGOs will continue running with high costs that we may have after the COVID in terms of transport of people, moving people from one country to another, setting people from one country to another country. There is a lot of uncertainty there. And what is true is that this will not continue as it used to be before. So then there were a lot of questions around this, on which many NGOs are looking at how they can recruit, hire, engage, allow responsibility, transfer knowledge and technology to these people on the ground in order to continue serving, in order to continue running the operation. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, George, for this detailed view on really how it is NGO world on the ground, really. And just a quick question, you can just in one sentence, how would you say how distressed are these smaller organizations that you were talking about because of COVID right now, like in terms of the funding situation? So when COVID is over, so will there be like a big, let's say, drought there, and NGOs are not able to come back? Or how would you say, what's their situation, these small organizations?
Well, to be honest, all are predictions. But what it tells us now is that what may happen is after COVID, there will be lots of new requirements, but not real new requirements. The requirements, they were already there before, but were not emphasized by the donors before. From now on, there will be new requirements, is what they call visibility today. And the visibility today, this term exists since before, we were meaning different things. At that time, if I remember 20 years, the visibility was about putting a sticker of your donor, the services you do or products you deliver. That was visibility because it shows that this product was funded by this donor. Nowadays, visibility is more than that. Nowadays, visibility is about data. To say from the amount of funds that you got, how much you spend there and there and there. That is something that becomes as new. NGOs were not used to. And then that is one. Another one will be a reporting system, will be a kind of real-time reporting system. I mean, donors will not wait again for a year to get feedback about what is happening on the ground. They may probably need to have that information, let's say, more regularly than a year. It can be 3 monthly, can be monthly, can be all the time. I mean, NGOs will be required to have technology in order to process information and make it available to donors, sometimes make it available to the society that we're working with. So those are major changes that we are facing. Yeah. And then another one will be a sort of measurement, how much it costs, the service costs from A to Z, from upstream up to downstream. So there will be many changes that will be discussed or the appearance after COVID. Probably will not be all of them implemented at once, but for the next 5 years, will be in this kind of configuration.
Yeah.
Over.
Thank you very much for again, and congratulations on your first appearance on Clubhouse. It's an honor for me to have been the one who brought you in, actually. And thank you very much for the moment. And I would also like to quickly recap and encourage the other listeners to this panel. Like on the bottom right, feel free to raise your hands if you would like to contribute. I also see there are people with especially fundraising experience, deep fundraising, and like long. And I would also hear your perspectives, but maybe in later on, of course. And so we are still evaluating and assessing the state of NGOs in the year 2021, of course, with the impact of COVID. And if I may give the word to the two panelists from the JCI Syria NGO, to Batool and to Sara Khaddam, Batool Ahmad, Sara Khaddam. And what would you say, how deep let's say, in distress are NGOs, is the NGO sector, especially in Syria? Sara and Batool, would you like to give us a little impression about what you have seen and what your impressions are?
I was waiting for Batool because I thought that Batool would start. First of all, hello everyone, happy One NGO Day. Thank you, Mr. Daniel, again for this invitation. Greetings, Mr. George. You were asking, Mr. Daniel, about how now has the corona impacted NGO sector, right?
Yes, and especially like I think Syria is a special place and has had other impacts, of course, of civil war. And then, of course, but like how active and how alive is the NGO sector in Syria at all? Like just for us outsiders to have an idea about how it's
okay. I got your question. So first, I will talk about Syria. Like after 10 years of the conflict, there is several conflicts here. It's not about the war. It's the political and military war that we are facing after the war, after 10 years of it, and after the corona pandemic. The economic situation is getting worse here because the Syrian currency is plundered beside the U.S. currency. So because of this issue that we are facing, and because of the sanctions, the economic and financial sanctions on Syria. So we have several economic and financial difficulties, which affect negatively on the NGO sector. Because I will talk now about JCI. We are volunteers, so JCI is voluntary work, and it's non-profit organization. So now we are facing difficulties finding the financial, the funding for our project. Also the other NGOs, their funding is reducing because of the effects of the pandemic here.
Yeah, and it's certainly a situation in Syria that is even more extreme than, I would probably estimate like in Europe, but maybe we also have some takes on that. Let the people from the social networks that are joining us right now through Facebook and through YouTube, let's ask their questions. So you have the possibility to raise your question through the comment section here. So please don't be shy and make yourself heard. Ask your question to the panelists or bring in your perspective. So we have people joining. I see that here on the social network. So we would like to have it as transparent and interactive as possible. The possibility to reach to the social networks is you can just type in video.livebroadcasting with a dash .rocks. I am happy to display that later on, or if you find it actually in the when you click on my profile here on Clubhouse, and then you can also see the live stream here in the respective YouTube channel. Batool, are you? Can you hear us right now? Are you? I would like to also have your perspective on the challenges right now. What you see NGOs have to face in Syria, and maybe also from the world perspective, because JCI, Junior Chamber International, is a big a network of NGOs. So maybe you also have an idea from other members around the world how challenging the year 2020 and 21 is.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel, for having me today. And I can talk about the NGOs now in Syria that actually they play a bigger role now, and they are a main part in the community beside the private and the governmental sector or companies. So they have a big role now, and for us, like GCI, our mission is to provide the development opportunities that empower young people to create positive change. So that's the perspective that we work on every time we start a project or we want to do something. So for us, since the pandemic starts, we stopped everything, all our activities, and we had to move online. It was really hard for us because maybe there's a slow internet, some lack of the tools that we have not very much developed because of the war and its effects. But actually, in the end, we could manage, and we have done some trainings online, and we could do meetings online, and it was a really good thing to do. So for me, the pandemic helped us a lot to develop in a domain that we didn't think about earlier, maybe, and we could communicate with people from around the world. Like we could do the World NGO Day. We could celebrate it. We celebrated it in Syria last year and this year. So it's really nice, and having us today with you, Mr. Daniel, in this panel is really great. Mm-hmm. So actually, this pandemic has good effects and bad effects for me. Yeah.
It's true. There is always a chance in the crisis, isn't it? So I think in Chinese, the word crisis also means opportunity. And I would also agree with you that we are now, of course, at this point when this distress is also leading us to find new creative solutions, and especially for the non-governmental organizations that on the one hand have to serve to the people that are in need, but on the other hand, they are also really pressed and in distress again. And so this is, I think, the special situation right now. The only thing that is, of course, playing to the favor, in my point of view, to the NGO sector worldwide is that there is no alternative. So we need the organizations and we need the help from the civil society, from the bottom up. It's not top down, it's bottom up that is needed right now to really have a long lasting impact, and also the sustainable change that we are all looking for. So this is something that I would say the mission is definitely there. The mandate. It's as again George also pointed out, and he sees it from the operational point of view, that sometimes the making it happen, the process is difficult. But as you say, Batool, that you have been working on a lot in, educating yourself and the organization members, trying to become, savvy in the way how to reach out through digital means. I think this is something that will play in your favor now and make it possible to also reach out to potential, donors and supporters. I was in a conversation with Martin, actually, who is in the audience right now, and we were talking about the situation in fundraising, especially from the European German perspective, that donors in Germany have been decreasing from the size, but as I have understood, the donations in some have been stable, so it has been there has been an equilibrium, or there has been more donations in the size of altogether that balance that out. But the question was, how can young and new donors be involved? And so, of course, it would be nice to have all kind of big money donors, big foundations or something to get involved and having big chunks. But I think at the end of this discussion we had on Clubhouse yesterday, on Friday the 26th, in this fundraising morning get together, that was that there is also no way around than building up peer-to-peer, little by little, these new relationships with potential audience. And if I may add from my perspective as a professional digital marketing consultant and digital marketing campaigner, it is always nice to have to reach out through a paid advertising, of course, and to say, okay, we have a targeting and we want to target people from 35 to 45 and let's pay money for it, and these are the keywords. It is okay, but on the long lasting and the sustainable way to actually build up audience, and it's quite close actually to the idea of also building up supporters for the mission of a non-profit organization, is to really involve them in the cause, in the idea, in the giving them the content, giving them the real transparency, what is going on, telling them also the story. We are all talking about the storytelling in social media these days, that it's not so important to just post something, but also to really tell a story, to involve people. And I think this is what NGOs can really do, so that they really are on the grounds. They have a story to tell. They have something that they could share. And as we are doing it right now as well, we are streaming this out. We are a little, let's say radio or TV station here doing our live streaming, and people can watch us either now or in the replay and get involved with the cause. And so this is something that I would say you are on the really right track at JCI when you are building up your digital capacities like this. Would you like to add something, Sara or Batool, to that?
Yeah, thank you very much to Daniel again. Actually, for us, we have adapted to this big change immediately, and really we wanted to build our skills till we know how we can contribute with the community. So for us as the members, we had made like Photoshop training. It helped us a lot for our media team. We built our team. We had more members involved in it, and we have done a project that's called Yalla Freelance, which is about telling the people and helping the community to be introduced to freelancing and working on the internet. So it was really nice. It was a good opportunity actually to us to do something new and think out of the box, not only go on the ground and work with the local. So we had people contributed with us from around Syria and outside Syria too. So it was really nice, and I think we can all do it in that way somehow. If we had the Munich, maybe we can build our skills and benefit from it. So it's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And what was your results, or like, if I may ask, did you have already some outcomes in terms of your fundraising that you were able to gain new? Well, in digital marketing, let's say leads or new donors and supporters like that, or do you think it's still a way to go?
No, actually, about the supporting and the donation stopped now somehow. We only work on small projects, but I think that Sara can talk about a big project that we had in the end of 2020. Even with the Corona pandemic, we had the media forum, and she did very well about it. And we had big donation and support in this project. So she can talk about it because she was responsible, and that was the only big thing we had, and it was really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to add? Sara, did I understand it correctly? So thank you very much for this point of view. And yes, Martin Georgi is also with us. And Martin, we were talking about the fundraising point of view yesterday. And could you quickly introduce yourself and your experience? And welcome to the discussion.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for asking me up. My name is Martin Georgi. I've been involved for many years with various international and national NGOs, among them such organizations as the European Youth Forum and the Amnesty International, Christian Blind Mission, and other NGOs. And I'm working now as a consultant for non-governmental organizations in Germany. And I think that I'm also very much involved with the German Fundraising Association, which is what you mentioned, trying to improve fundraising in Germany for causes. I was thinking that today we should talk about NGOs, not like I can of course say something about fundraising if you like, but that's just one aspect of NGO work. I'm a bit surprised by the small number of participants here, which I don't think also the day I had never heard of it before as a major day, so maybe it needs a little bit more attention to be really known as an international day. And I think some of the comments made, I just wanted to check back again with the other panelists, because I think Jorge or Georgia was referring, I think, mostly to development NGOs, which are the traditional model of
operational NGOs, basically.
Coming from a rich country to a poorer country and trying to do development there. And I think that's just one model of NGOs. And I think there are many other NGOs in Africa and Asia, in many continents, which are local NGOs, which are very much independent. And that's also my question to our two Syrian participants. You know, we have a lot of projects working with Syrian refugees because of the crisis in Syria, and trying to establish particularly the situation of people who've had to leave Syria because of the difficult economic and political situation, the war that is, and thousands of people have fled Syria, and particularly in Germany, we have thousands of Syrians who have come here to, particularly also young people who have come here to live a new life because the situation in Syria was impossible. So I think at the moment it's always an issue for donors and for NGOs to know, what are you really doing? What is your real work? And the non-governmental really means being independent of government. And that's a challenge, I think, for many organizations to make sure that you have a position which is not just repeating the government position, because then you are just a junior government organization. And it's the same a bit with the economy or the economics and the side of business, because many NGOs, not all of them, but many NGOs also pride themselves of being different from business, because in business, your main motive usually is economic gain, whereas for many NGOs, there's a more humanitarian or charitable purpose, which is to do good, but not necessarily to get rich. So that's a question I would have here for the panel is, are we here as NGOs to get rich or to support our governments? Or is it to improve the situation of people and maybe also to, maybe that's from my critical past, also to criticize the government and to criticize business when they are not fulfilling humanitarian ideals and ideals of peace and justice and worldwide solidarity and cooperation.
And again, so as if I may also add, so this is a little bit missing in your point of view, Martin. So what I can hear, so you are seeing this operational point of view, okay, but the NGOs that are basically fighting for something and also asking the not so easy questions, that is a little bit missing in your point of view.
Yeah, I think we should see that on many levels. I mean, there are local organizations which are just working on a local level to improve, say, the education in a town, or to improve the environment in a town, or to improve the situation of old people in a town. That can be very local or it could be regional, but it could also be national. And I think if you are non-governmental, I think the important thing is to make sure that you are maintaining a certain independence and that you're not just an agency working for others. And some of the large NGOs have that problem of maintaining their independence because they are put under pressure. And unfortunately, because you were asking before about the situation of NGOs, I think in many countries, the situation of NGOs has improved over the last years because many more NGOs have been founded and many NGOs have been able to do their work. But we also see the situation in many countries where, in fact, the work of NGOs is hindered by the governments, and people who are working for NGOs are put in prison and are not able to do their work because working, for example, for the environment or working for the rights of political prisoners or working for the rights of young people is considered a threat to the state. And so I know that in many countries, the prisons are full of activists who have tried to go for a better society. And we use the expression shrinking spaces for that because in many countries, the maneuver or the ability of organizations to work has been restricted by laws and by people being put under threat, being shot, being killed, and being put in prison. And that's what I know the situation is in Syria. And for many people who have been working on in organizations, the situation has been quite difficult, and that's why hundreds of thousands have fled the country. And I know that's also the situation in many countries of Africa and Asia, that people who have been working for NGOs have been put under threat. So for me, the perspective is that on a day like this, that we should honor the people who are not just fighting for themselves, and not just fighting for their money, but they're actually fighting for solidarity and for improving the situation in their countries.
Absolutely. And also the point of view, I would say, for NGO means that it's it's a really it's really a classified word that is especially used, or a meaning that is used by the United Nations. So there is NGO definition, and that's one of the few definitions actually that makes clear what actually what an NGO is. That it's like it's a free organization. It's not done by a governmental organization. It's also not profit distributing, and so this is already in this meaning. And Sara, Batool, so what are your points? What are your takes on that? What Martin just brought up?
I need to add a point for what Mr. Martin said about the NGOs, the funded NGOs here. First of all, about this JCI, as I said, so the foundation or the funding for our project or initiative, whether if it's small or big, we try always to have it from the companies and from the private sectors. regarding to the social responsibility. So that's how we collaborate with the companies and with the private sector, because as an organization, we cannot take a funding or have a funding from another NGO. So JCI is a non-governmental and a non-profit, and the funding for JCI is not from the other nations or other NGOs, because here in Syria, the NGO cannot take money from another NGO. There must have like association or something between them to give us the money. So this is my first idea, and the second idea that yes, you are right, Mr. Martin, about the funding for the NGOs like UNHCR, UNICEF, WFP. But the funding for this organization now, maybe it's not for the reconstruction, because like the UNDP. So now it went to the reconstruction. So it's not like when it starts, even for the LDPs or for the refugees. And as JCI, let me explain more what we are working for. We are working for developing youth to be active members in their societies. So we are trying to make the youth think and create the idea, transform it to a project, to make like a budget, to prepare the proposal of the project, to give their ideas to the society. To try to collaborate and connect with the supporters and the companies. This is what we do actually. That's why we have difficulties in the last years in the funding, because of the economic situation, as I said before. And about what Batool talked, let me say to you, Mr. Daniel, about the media forum. When lockdown ended last year in 15 October 2020, we had the media that was to talk about many topics about the media and the social media, also in the techniques that we need here to improve the media in Syria. The media forum was a huge platform where many televisions and radios and journalism were there to discuss more topics, in addition to like a collaboration by my university that I'm studying in Syrian Virtual University. Also, the project was, by the presence of Ministry of Information. So it was a huge platform to discuss these topics. Also about that you were asking, Mr. Daniel, about the project that had an impact of funding. Yeah, about like what Batool said about Yalla Freelance, and we have another project last year. It was called Tartus Lunch. Tartus Lunch was to provide opportunities to young people to talk about their ideas. And if a company or private sector, like a bank, like this idea, so it funds this idea and give money to the owner of this idea. So we have 8 ideas transformed to a real project, and now they are implemented on ground.
Sara, are you based in Syria or are you based somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm in Syria.
And so you were working with the Ministry of Information, but isn't I don't know that much about the details of the actual situation, but I hear that there's a lot of criticism about governmental activities in Syria. So I'm a bit surprised to consider that a non-governmental approach, because and also what you said about receiving money, I think that's a good point that you made there, because I think in the spirit of being a world international NGO, I think one of the key characteristics is to be able to also exchange personnel and exchange people and exchange ideas, whether this is press, whether this is books, whether this is newspapers, whether this is radio, whether this is also but exchange of experts, but also exchange of money, and for organizations to be able to support each other. And I know that in some countries, I don't know the situation, so what you said, it seems to be in Syria not possible, but also I've heard that in many other countries, the support from international NGOs has been reduced because people are afraid and saying that this is international interference.
Mr.
I think just one last sentence. I think this is a big problem because I think international NGOs do have the interest to be able to support projects in different countries and local activities. And if the government then says you cannot send your people or you cannot send your money, then of course it's not possible to work as an international NGO. And then on a day like this, when we're talking about world NGOs, I think we should criticize that attitude and maintain our independence and say that the free movement of people and ideas and the support, the solidarity between organizations is extremely important today as World NGO Day.
Exactly. This is an idea I was about to talk about. Is the belief in the voluntary work here in Syria? Actually, we don't have that. You believe in voluntary work as we are actually do here. You are completely right. And maybe Batool can talk about the World NGO Day when we commemorated it last year. She can talk about the collaboration and the networking between like more than 15 association and organization. That's the idea that we are talking about here. We need this collaboration. Like the other NGOs or the other UN agencies have a one specific action plan and implement it all the year, and they don't have something to do, another thing to do out of this. I mean, out of the box. Okay, I don't mean to criticize them, but here in JCI and why I like and love JCI, because any idea that you can transform it to a project. So it's different in the several ideas that you can transform it and make it, and all it's from youth. So here you can provoke the brain to have more ideas and to create. That we are trying to go out of the box. And this is the idea that is connected with we need here in Syria more belief in the voluntary work that we are doing.
Just would like to react a little bit if we have a few minutes. Bennett, okay?
Sure.
So I would like to react to a few points. Some of them were asked by Martin at some point. One was the difference between international NGOs and national NGOs in the way we act and we get found. And then another one was about the independence or freedom towards pressure from donors or whoever can be government or not. So there are things here when we talk about NGO that most of the time we assume as taboo, we never talk about. Is the funding. And then the other one is what we call the independence or freedom from pressure. I believe most of organizations, they have at some pressure, they will have at some point pressure. At any given point in time, they face pressure, depending where most of their funds come from and the agenda they are addressing. And then which fund they use, which fund they get, I think it depends on organization, philosophy, mission, and what they believe and what they stand for. Then I won't go to that because every organization has its own specificity and that. But when we come back to the difference between international and national, international of yesterday, okay, was the big machine that comes in another country to do the work instead of one others. Will bring international people, as everyone knows. But one thing that will happen after COVID, we do not talk much about competing, but at some point we'll compete with national organizations because of one reason. as we can see, GSI, if I'm not mistaken, is an organization that is addressing a specific issue in their country. It's an international organization today. They are repositioning themselves into new ways of doing things, into new market. As you could see, that the basic services that we usually do now they can be conducted or performed by national organizations or others that can even be integrated into government systems. So then from that, we start to look for new things to do, new ways to do. It's very, very probable or possible that one day international organization will want to penetrate into the market of the organization that the GSI is performing today, working with Europe. It's probable. So then what will happen then? One will have funds, limited funds, one will have major funds, or both look for the fund for the similar project. What I mean there is the competing. And then they will search funds from the same donor. Let me position myself as a donor. I'll give to both. 1 million to this one, to national, 1 million to international. What they were looking for is to see who's more efficient and effective, who's delivering more services with the same amount they've given, who's having better system, who's providing the best quality service, who's communicating more, because communication is the most important thing for donors. Because if you can make people know what the money that you have been given by these donors, you are doing it, then they don't relax you. By then, we have pressure at some point. Because at a given moment, you'll do something that the donor, the major donor you have, may not like. And then will come to you and say, okay, I don't like you to do this kind of stuff. Yeah, this is one pressure. Yeah. If it's that, they start to put the barriers. We may be donors that they are, let's say, member state donors. So they put you pressure. They say, okay, if you continue doing this, so I will draw my funding. So if the funding to your organization represents, let's give 50% or 4% or 40%, you may not be, let's say, prepared to accept a donor, 40% donor withdraw from your program. So at some point, you will have to align. This is something that we never talk about. Many organizations that don't talk about.
I don't quite agree, Jorge. I don't agree to your position because, first of all, I think the more clever NGOs will not just depend on one donor. So if you have several donors, then you're not dependent, and particularly if you're having independent donors. So if you're depending, of course, on a government which has clear political ideas and things you should do, same goes for some companies which have clear ideas, then sometimes you're a bit more dependent than if you are depending on private donors. So if you, for example, have lots of small private donors, then you are quite independent. You don't need to have this pressure.
I agree with you, Martin. We used to do this in my organization, as you say. But for national, local NGOs, they have that issue.
Well, I don't agree. I think if it depends how you... I don't agree. It depends how you build up your donors. And I always advise people to not depend on one donor, because if you depend on one donor, no matter who it is, then you're always dependent. So if you have 3 donors, you are less dependent. And if you have 100 donors, you're even less dependent on one donor. Yeah. So, and I think so that's just one. I don't think, but if we're talking today about independence, I think it's also a question of your mission. Because if you clearly say we are an independent organization, then a donor who wants to control you will not even give you any money. So you will never have that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I may just ask also, please go, George.
Sorry. Yes. No, I agree with Martin. So the reality today for national or NGOs, there are very, very few national NGOs having diversified donors. Most of them, they have 1 or 2 or 3 donors. If they have 3 and each of them is 30%, they cannot at some point in the middle of their operations accept to withdraw 1, which is a risk. And then I agree with Martin when you say you need to diversify more your donors. It's right. But then, is that the picture of today that we have with national NGOs or not? That is the big question I have. Because the NGOs that they observe, mainly in Africa, they have 1 or 2 or 3 donors. That's all. Very few. Very few of them that they have multiple donors, but I can even count with my hand. But most of them, they have 1 or 2 or 3 donors, major donors. National organization. International is okay because they have diversified strategy and they're operating in many countries, in many projects. The issue with national is that if some of them, they are very local, and sometimes in one region, and sometimes in one country, and sometimes, so then they are likely to be exposed to the dependency. Over.
And also, if we, because I think so we just have a few minutes left. Of course, we can also extend a little bit. But the point that Martin raised about 25 minutes ago, that was basically, let me just recap, on the quality of like funding, on the quality of how dependent is an NGO. And let me quickly go also into the definition of an NGO, because this is like a UN definition, and there is the quality of a formal organization or of a non-state, so separate from the state. And this is where the discussion can already start, because a lot of NGOs from smaller countries or from countries where you would say it's maybe not the most democratic form of a country, they are still having the governments have a lot of influence in that, and that's clear. Okay, but they are still called an NGO. And they might also be within the UN panel or within the, they might be recognized by the UN, even though there is some state affiliation inside. Then there is the non-profit distribution quality, that's the non-profit quality of the NGO. And the target focus, that it's primarily for not a lobby organization, but it is rather advocacy or an operational organization, and it's cross-border activity, international NGOs. That's fine. So, and Martin raised the point that, we should think more of like this, let's say like the mission, and also the goals, and also what it takes, like let's say also the hero-ness of the NGOs, and think of people that stand behind these goals and also move forwards with a lot of courage. I think this is all fine and I think understood. Still, there is the question of finance, and I think you can praise NGOs for whatever they do, but I think the fact is that the funding situation for NGOs hasn't become easier, and like sometimes also a state or a government, maybe in Europe, funding non-profit organizations or NGOs hasn't been has been stabilizing for an NGO, where there has been only little funding from private donors. So like from maybe a word from your background as a fundraiser, are you trying to differentiate now, like a kind of, there are good NGOs and there are like maybe not so valuable NGOs with that, or how can we move on from there? Because I think finally of course I'm coming a little bit from this perspective where I would say, of course it would be nice to have a lot of donors and to make the NGOs more open and transparent to the donors, and so the markets or let's say the donors will then also decide whether the NGO has a true reason. Is this a good approach, or would you disagree with that?
I think, in my opinion, from a fundraising point of view, we generally are optimists. And I think generally, if you look at it worldwide, I know the situation is not the same in every country. And in some countries, the situation is very, very difficult. Also in some parts of some countries, and some organizations are facing really big financial problems, of course. But nevertheless, I think there is a lot of money available, and if you do good fundraising, you should be able to get money for your organization. That's a bit different, and that's where I would agree with Jorge, that if you from the start of your work see yourself as an agency of the government, then of course you're going to be dependent on the government for your money. If you see yourself as part of business, then you're going to be dependent on business, and then you will not have this wide flexibility to also get money for your purpose. But if you see yourself as independent and you take money from different sources and you fight for your independence and you have a clear purpose, then I think it's much easier to get different types of funding from people who are inspired by your mission. And I think I don't like to so much say that there are good NGOs and bad NGOs, but there are clearly NGOs which have a clear purpose and have a clear mission, and that really differentiate their activities and have excellent, well-designed projects. And there are other organizations which have very bad projects and very poor projects. Not all NGOs are really doing very good work, and some organizations communicate well and some organizations communicate very poorly. So I think there's always room for improvement. What my point was for this International NGO Day is to say that I think there are some governments, and that's what I think is happening in Syria. I know this is happening in Egypt. I know this is happening in Russia. I know this is happening in many countries of Eastern Europe. I know it's also happening in some other countries of Africa. And it's happening certainly in many countries of Asia, that governments are restricting the work of the NGOs through laws and by putting activists in prison. And so I think there's an urgent call for international solidarity for those activists who are trying to do good work for social purposes, for human rights, for peace, for justice, but which are put in prison and which are not being allowed to do their work, and which are being threatened, and which are being kidnapped and being shot. And I think we have thousands and thousands of people who are under threat today on this NGO Day. And I think on a day like this, we should remember them. And we should know that in some countries, if you look at some countries of Africa, if you look at some countries now, like Syria, you have millions of people who have left and who are not actually living in the country anymore. And I think that's a big tragedy for those countries where there's a lot of activists and good people have had to leave because the situation was so terrible, and particularly young people who have left. We have many refugees coming to Germany also from Africa, because they are not finding a place to work and to be successful in their countries. And I think if we want to be NGOs, we should also be able to criticize the governments for not giving enough support to young people, for not providing sufficient education, for not providing social solidarity, so that people have to leave their countries and go elsewhere. And I think our purpose should be to allow people to have a good life wherever they live, and not to have to flee, and not to be shot, and not to be put in prison.
Yes, of course, and I'm from Germany too, and I think every country and every civil society has to ask itself the question whether the non-profits are going far enough. And I think, of course, criticizing or, of course, I think coming from the point of view from, saying, okay, what would be the ideal situation? Of course, living in freedom and having freedom of speech is, of course, easier to desire from an outside point of view. So I just wanted to tell the story that I asked one of the organizers of the World NGO Day yesterday, hey, why don't you give me your LinkedIn access? And he just told me, I'm from a country that I don't have social media access anymore because of because my country where I'm from is threatening me. So, and of course, this is absolutely correct what you're raising, and I absolutely see the reason for the World NGO Day to also make aware there are non-profit organizations, small, and their volunteers that are reaching out and for a purpose that is not necessarily about funding. And but of course, the measurement, how we measure what is reasonable and democratic, is of course always relative, because in Europe or in Germany, I would say we rather have quite a good record of it, but we also still have to say, well, there are also these refugees coming from Syria threatened by Germans sometimes, because there is also not the perfect world in Germany where you can say, well, it's all like we have achieved like the kind of freedom of society. I think it's a world in progress here that we have to actually work for.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Daniel and Mr. Martin, you're actually right, because here in Syria, actually, we don't have that freedom of speech. Talk about the media forum, the approval of the Ministry of Information took like more than 1 month to take it from the Ministry of Information, because they actually was they were like think about that we what we are going to talk, and the topic and the speakers, and they ask for the information, the specific information about the speakers and something like this. So yes, we actually don't have that freedom of speech here, and always have issues and problems with the governmental here and with the laws. Whenever we want to start the project, we need to take the approval of the governmental sector. So we always first when we start our project, we always go to the governmental sector to take the approval. Otherwise, we can't start our project if we don't have the approval. You know this. And about the mission that Mr. Martin was talking about. Yes, when you go to the website of JCI, it's just jci.cc. You can find JCI one mission, one vision with more than with thousands of opportunities. So our mission is to provide development opportunities that empower young people to create the positive change. And our vision is to be the leading global network of young active citizens. So this is our focus, and we have several and different opportunities to do.
Well, is there like an oversight then, if it's like an international network, that you are, well, look at each other and therefore also keep kind of regulations and keep that it's kind of that there is
even the sanction of on Syria. I can talk about the restrictions. Like the restricted websites, you know, when I try to make that a research, because I'm a student in mass communication, measuring radio and television, so we have researches to do. So most of the websites are restricted here. I will give you an example. It's like Coursera, because we are in Syria, that we cannot open Coursera without proxy, or you know that VPN, because we are in Syria, and most websites that we cannot open them because we are in Syria. This is like a simple example of the problems that we are facing, you know. And we have the issue of electricity. For example, we are here now, and I am now without the electricity. The internet issue. So we have several problems. You know, it's like the negative impact of the war for 10 years, the conflict, and of the corona pandemic, for sure.
Wow. And well, thanks. Of course, I think this has been, of course, not the largest clubhouse discussion that has ever been, but it has been a discussion and a panel that has really also stretched different perspectives, and I really wanted to thank you for bringing in all these perspectives, and also, of course, letting us see not only the fundraising but also the idealistic point of view, and also, of course, the right and the freedom that NGOs are helping the societies to become like a freer and more tolerant society. The question is here asked from Jan, and that is particularly on Clubhouse. Is Clubhouse going to play a role in the new NGO marketing strategies? So, of course, this is a question we don't really know how Clubhouse is going to develop. So social audio is going to be a big thing in digital marketing. This is for sure. What would you say? So this morning we had a panel from with a panelist from Kazakhstan. They said normally they already use Clubhouse for team meetings because they can do it remotely, and the voice sharing is like better than like doing video conferences, and it's easier, it's comfortable. How do you see Clubhouse as new social media and the possibility to reach out? Any thoughts on that?
Of course, after today, me and Sara are going to introduce the Clubhouse to our friends and colleagues in GCI Tartus and GCI Syria. It was a really great chance to get introduced to how to use Clubhouse and how much it is effective. We can talk and have debates like today in different projects and different ideas, and we can have the community participated with us. So yes, of course, we are going to introduce it by today to our friends, and we start working on it.
Mm-hmm. And Martin, so you have been in this fundraising Clubhouse meeting on Friday morning, so this is why we know each other. So what are your personal experiences with it? So from the few weeks Clubhouse is really in all people's minds. What is your take on it? Do you see there's a place for it, or are you waiting?
Well, I'm watching very much, and I'm not so sure yet. I think at the moment it's still a place for very few people to talk and to exchange ideas. So, I mean, that's always useful. But in terms of being a real power for NGOs, I'm not so sure yet. I think some of the more specialized rooms which have the ability to exchange on a specific subject can, of course, be quite useful. And audio has some advantages to video and some of the other apps that are available. So probably there will be a market, but I don't know yet if it's going to be a big force for improving the work of organizations and particularly fundraising. I'm not so sure yet. We'll see. And I think as Sara was saying, and good luck, Sara, with all of the difficulties you're facing there. I think like with any other app, it's always a question of accessibility, having enough internet bandwidth, having the permissions from the various governments, having electricity, all these other things. So I think we're facing many difficulties before we can say that such a tool will actually be a success. I think anyway, I think it's just one tool of many. So we should always try to find the right tools, of course, for our work. But I can just say on a day like this, it's important also to think of what is our mission, what is our goal, and how can we...
And the purpose.
Also,
because
what is the purpose of our work, exactly.
I have a question here. Maybe this is something that I would like to also ask you, Martin. So Theresia is asking, what role does social media and especially live broadcasting and marketing in the young generation play to make aware of your purpose and the work you do as an NGO? What is your point of view when it comes to these tools in the fundraising?
Well, social media has become more important over the last years, but it's quite frankly still playing only a small percentage of the overall income. For young people, of course, social media is much more important than for the older people. And in terms of raising awareness of you and actually getting people involved, and that's then talking about activism much more than finance. I think social media have become quite important, but still in terms of the overall market, it's still playing not the biggest role. It's increasing strongly from year to year, and it will become more important over the next 5 years. But much of the donations still happen over traditional methods like post by the mail, by direct contact, by events, by grants. etc. So, as I said, fundraising is best if it's coming from different sources, and social media is an important source, and it's growing. But it's, for many organizations, it's still a small part of the income. And as I said, but however, for young people, of course, it's important. If you're really looking at money, however, you should also take into consideration that, of course, older people tend to have more money than younger people. So if you're actually looking for effective fundraising, it's not so bad to also look at the older people who might be able to give you significantly more money than the young people.
And I'm just remembered of my times when working for consumer goods marketing, and there was this brand that was particularly bought by the older generation. And at a certain point, the producer of this chocolate was then really afraid and said, well, actually, we have declining revenues because the older generation is kind of not that strong anymore, so there are less people buying it and new people are not coming. So is this actually the same thing happening? Because what I remember from yesterday's conversation was that the number of donations is declining, so that it's going back. So still, like, the size of the donations is leveling this out. But could we be in a similar situation that we are a little bit neglecting the younger generation, and we are not feeding new donors and new supporters to NGOs in the long run?
Well, I don't know how much more time we have here. I think that's an issue we could discuss for at least 45 more minutes.
Oh yeah.
It's a complicated issue because you can take two different positions on it. If you want to take the position of strength of the market, I think, as you can see in the German market, the fundraising market grew by 5% last year. And also in some other countries, in some countries it didn't do so well, the fundraising market, but in Germany it increased last year because the economy, even despite the pandemic, didn't decrease that strongly as in some other countries. And since many of the incomes, and that's why I was referring to the old people, the older donors who are depending on pensions, and the pensions were very secure last year. There was no problem with the pensions. And actually, people could not go out into restaurants. They could not go out to the movies. So they had much more money to spend. So actually, fundraising was quite successful last year. So the income has grown. In terms of what you're talking about, the number of donors, yes, there's been a small decrease from year to year of the number of donors. So there is a worrying trend. But again, if you're looking at size and income, I don't think there's a problem. If you're looking at participants, then it is an issue. But of course, the younger activists who are maybe giving some individual small donations, or who are giving on a gaming or streaming platform, who are just activists and not donating any money, but just giving their activism, they would not be part of those figures that we're talking about. So I don't actually think the situation is as bad as it's being reported. I think there is a lot of activism. Young people are very involved in Germany in many causes. You saw the Big Fridays for Future movement. You saw all of the solidarity work for the refugees, and all of those people who spent countless hours in helping, for example, refugees to find their place in Germany, or in helping all of the climate change discussions. All of them would not be listed under those statistics because they're not donating any money, but they're donating a lot of their time and their efforts. So I'm actually quite optimistic that overall we're having also in the pandemic time, we're having more solidarity rather than less, even though it's not always shown in the figures.
Wow, thank you. And yes, you already mentioned the time. We could go on, but I think it was actually, we reached a good we reached a good length and also good findings. If somebody would like to, would we like to make a quick wrap up World NGO Day 2021, maybe beginning with Jorge, like in one sentence. So what does it mean to you, and what would you like to wish the NGO sector to be in when we meet in 1 year from now?
Well, I will wish all NGOs, including national NGOs, to diversify as much as Martin says, the source of funding. That is one. And secondly, I think it will be an interesting competition between national and international, because the rule of games are changing. So as we can see, some international organizations, they're already starting operation in their home countries. That means there is something happening in other sides of the globe, so then there will be changes too. So it will be higher competition. That is something I wanted to say. Thank you and over.
Thank you. And Sara, what is your final word on World NGO Day 2021, and how would you like to see it in 1 year?
Yeah, I want to say like 2 points. The first one, as a young person living here in Syria during and through these circumstances, maybe other people consider these issues are simple and little, but you know, when you are a young person and live through these circumstances for 10 years and can't find the right opportunity, so such as all the people and youth that who left and traveled to find the opportunity that they want, and we still, even though we're still trying to do something and to create the positive impact. So I think this is a huge achievement, and the huge achievement today is to be here with you, Mr. Daniel, and with Batool, Mr. Martin, Mr. George, here commemorating World NGO Day, even all the circumstances that we are facing. So happy World NGO Day.
Thank you. Batool, so what is your final outlook?
All right, then I will say that the World NGO Day works like a reminder for us, like for NGOs, for the major role that we have in society. So it's really important for us. Like last year, we gathered 15 organizations and NGOs to meet under the celebrating the World NGO Day. So it was really great, and we worked together from that day till today, like a one team. And today we met here in this panel. So I hope that next year we have better results and better effects in our society, locally and internationally. And happy World NGO Day.
Thank you. And Martin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just hope the NGOs get a lot of opportunities over the next year to improve their work, to become stronger, to reinvigorate their purpose and their fundraising, and that we manage to stop governments from putting up barriers for action. So I'm always against walls and more for bridges, and I think that's the job of the NGOs, to build bridges and not walls.
Wow. So thank you very much for your participation, and it was a premiere. So I have never done like a clubhouse like this, even with streaming this out. I am really happy that you took the time, and also I would like to thank you really for staying here connected, and it was like a little bit longer than expected. But Martin, also let me thank you for your insights, and looking forward to seeing or listening to you soon, maybe next Friday in the morning. And Sara and Batool, I also wish you all the best for your continuation of your young careers, like may it be in the food processing industry or in the international organization sector. And George, all the best for you in the international organizations world. And that is it for today, World NGO Day 2021. That is me, Daniel Schwenger. I would really appreciate if I could have your consent for using some of your words for the NGO-Weekly Podcast that I am doing. And hi, I'm Daniel. What actually makes you and sentences for this podcast? If you have anything that you would say, hey, I doubt that was something that I would like to take back, or so, it's Clubhouse is a new medium. I have full understanding. Please then send me a message, and I would, of course, not consider it. So then let me thank you again very much. And so this was that for this Clubhouse meeting, and wishing you a good evening wherever you are right now.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and all of you have a great day. Happy World NGO Day.
Thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone. And see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
George. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.